Welcome to a new episode of Storied. My name is Stephanie Felix, and I'm the executive producer, creator, and host. And today we will be talking about the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation. Ladies, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, I am Angela Sims. I'm a makeup artist in New York City.
I'm Tayyara Muhammad, and I do digital marketing in New York City.
And I am Farah Perry, and I also do digital marketing in New York City.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. What were your initial reactions when you heard that he had been, in fact, confirmed?
Disappointment. That's like the main, I guess, word that can like describe the feeling of it. Not so much surprise because we all knew it was going to happen. It was more of disappointment that our country would allow it to happen, that we've gotten this far for someone like Kavanaugh to be elected to the highest ranking of our Supreme Court system.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I was disappointed that, like, in this atmosphere that we have going on right now, that it was able to happen. You know, back during Anita Hill, like back in the day, like, I feel like it wasn't this Me Too, you know, we didn't have the Time's Up, we didn't have, you know, all of these different people and these different groups speaking out against, you know, sexual assault. So although I wasn't surprised because I was like, okay, whatever, we know what's gonna happen with this. I was a little bit like, dang, like I thought that the current climate might kind of influence, you know, and they might make a correct decision for once.
Yeah. Even, I don't know if you guys saw, there was a moment, I can't remember the exact senator's name, but like these women got to him in an elevator and they were describing their sexual assault, and he actually came back a little bit. He's like, you know what, like let's do a proper FBI. It wasn't proper, but let's do an FBI probe. And for that like moment, I actually did have a glimmer of hope. I'm like, oh, you know what, like maybe they're not as heartless and cold as we think. Now I'm thinking, you know, maybe it was just so they could put him on the court and say, oh, we did the FBI investigation, we found nothing, but it was, you know, it's 5 days.
Because they use them like pawns.
Exactly.
And at this point, we know a lot of things that we see is for show, and so you're right.
Yeah. I also wasn't surprised, but I think there is a part of you that's hopeful. Like, you can't process this idea that this could actually happen, and then if it does happen, what are the implications? Like, what are the messages that we're sending? The highest court in the land, a man that was accused of sexual assault, no proper investigation, and it's all okay. Like, what does that mean for us as a people? As women, as black women. So what are your thoughts on like the implication or impact, or what do you see as some of the potential outcomes of this new environment that we're moving into? Because for me, it felt like a shift.
It makes me wonder if things have actually changed as much as we think they have changed. Because we say we've come a long way, and then sometimes all it takes is that one moment for us to then be 5, 10, 12 steps back.
Yeah.
And even within the realm of just, when I think of women and us existing just now in general, as it pertains to sex, sexual assault, a lot of it is just still speaking to that aspect where we don't have as much agency as we think we do, and in not having that agency, that much more work that we have to do, that much more that we have to fight to get to that point where it's like, not only are we finally seen as the humans that we are, but people are now understanding what's at stake. So even now, I'm wondering, do people really know what is still at stake?
It's a good question. I mean, honestly, like I kind of wondered the same thing, especially when I see women like Senator Collins who are saying, oh, you know, like I think she was assaulted, but just not by Kavanaugh. Like that's such a stupid statement to me. So I wonder the same thing, like how far have we really come?
Or even the video that was created. I forget, it was a women's group too that created this video where they're basically, you know, they're kind of showing men, like, you know, there's a baby playing sports, high school, and then it just being this whole, you raise your son, and then what happens in one moment if they're accused of sexual, like, that was just like,
and it was moms.
Kind of
you
turned
all
it
are
on
gonna do this now?
Moms for Kavanaugh.
You all are
I think
gonna do this now?
I think it was called Moms for Kavanaugh.
Moms for Kavanaugh,
the
but
group.
it's like, when have men ever really had a hard time? You know, in those instances, sexual assault is not something where you have these group of women going around lying about it. I mean, statistics show that the amount of women falsely accusing men of sexual assault still is less than even men who are sexually assaulted and women who are sexually assaulted. And then what is not being reported. So it's like, you literally took the time to take your dusty self and create this video. And so now it's like the lies spread. It's literally like fake news. It's propaganda. And so again, like, what is really at stake? Because that is a very bold move to me, especially in this current political climate of, like you said, you know, Me Too and Time's Up.
I mean, I think, I really feel that if the President of the United States can joke about grabbing a woman's vagina, there's really not much room, like, for us to really be able to, like, fight back to a point where we can start to really see the change that we need to. At this point, I mean, I think it's going to take, I think it's still going to take more time, because when we think about, like, systems that oppress, it usually takes some type of huge shift in that base. So with this country, I mean, just like it was built on the backs of slaves, it was also built on the oppression of women and the, you know, abuse and assault of women as well. So it's really going to take some astronomical, like, shift in our society. Like, we're really going to have to, like, everyone's going to have to get on the same page and say, okay, this is a problem. And most importantly, the people at the top. And they're not willing to give up that. Like, it's just not going to happen right now. So, I mean, unfortunately, like, I feel like the message that we send to our little girls are, you know, how do we, we've got to teach you how to protect yourself, because we know that our society, we know that our court system is not going to protect you. And somebody brought up a really good point about sexual assault. The question usually it's not really just, do we believe women? It's, do we believe this woman deserved this assault? Exactly. Do we believe this man deserved to be accused of this assault?
Wow.
And and when I saw it, it hit me, and I was like, oh snap. She was like, I really think we need to change the conversation, because it's not just, do we believe women, because we know sexual assault happens. Like you said, we know it's going to happen. 1 in 4 women. So it's not, that's not what we're saying. What we're really saying is, do we, you know, believe she deserved it? And then that's when we have the conversations.
That's where it gets more honest.
Why were you at the party? Why'd you keep going to the party?
Why did you dress that way?
If you knew that they were assaulting women, why did you keep going? You know, and then it's, look at Brett Kavanaugh. Okay, you know, do we believe he deserved it? You know, he was this good boy, and he was at Yale, and even him, he's saying too, when he's crying, you know, he's like, I got to Yale with no connections, which is a lie. He's saying, do I deserve to be accused of this? No, I don't deserve to be accused of this. And it's unfortunate, but we've got to start teaching. We're going to have to start having these conversations with our little girls, though, so that they're aware of the atmosphere that they're going out into.
Yeah. You talked earlier a little bit about giving up power, and you also said, what will it take for us to make this shift? So I want to pose a quote to you that I found on an Instagram that I follow, and it says, white women will always be the weakest links in the struggle for equality because they view equality as achieving status with white men. Agree, disagree, reactions. I know it's a pretty provocative statement, but just talking about power dynamics, the intersection of race and gender, what we've seen with the hearings. What are your thoughts?
Can you read that one more time?
Sure.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. So white women will always be the weakest links in the struggle for equality because they view equality as achieving status with white men. Makes me think a little bit of this Moms for Kavanaugh campaign that existed, and this idea of creating alignment between you and a white man that's in power.
I agree.
I think it's valid. It is very valid, but I wonder sometimes too, in getting lost in delusions, because at the end of the day, I don't fully believe white men are willing to share that power either. So sometimes I wonder if a lot of it with white men and women is, well, I'm going to take what I can get. If that means having some level of superiority, even if I'm never fully on the same playing field as white men, like, if I can take what I can get, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to focus on me. And I mean, obviously it doesn't speak to the whole, but then sometimes you have to wonder in holding people accountable why certain people don't speak out about certain things, or they try to maintain a neutral position, so you don't know outwardly what those intentions are. You don't know, like, even moms for Kavanaugh, they didn't just have white boys and white men in that video, but the message still pertains to the same concept, keeping one element of power and only having that element of power while keeping everyone else oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree. I view it the same way I view black men who vie for equality to white men. So they oppress black women in the same way, in order to make that shift. As white women, they'd have to say, we acknowledge this privilege that we have. Mm-hmm. Like, we acknowledge the playing field that we're on, and we are going to be willing to take a step back and relinquish that power, or we're going to take a step back from that privilege and propel, you all forward, because we recognize that in order to kind of shift that dynamic, we have to be willing to give up power. So, like, at the end of the day, if everybody's struggling for power, whatever little piece of power that they can hold on to, it doesn't move the culture forward. Like, it doesn't move us forward in the fight for equality, because everybody's, it's almost like crabs in a bucket. Like, everybody's like, no, I'm trying to get to the top. No, I'm trying to get to the top. And I think if women really sat back and acknowledged the level of power that they do have, they would be able to say, oh, snap, like, we can make a difference. Like, think about the waves one white woman's cries can make in a corporate setting. Mm-hmm. Like,
we've seen that.
We've seen that. Think about that. Like, if women were, and a lot of times with privilege, across the board, it's hard for people to take a step back and acknowledge their privilege. Unfortunately, that's the problem. It's like you don't see it, and so they'd have to be presented with it and accept it and see it, and then say, okay, we're going to consciously make this decision to push you guys forward to try to help further this along. But a lot of times they're not willing to, and we see the women that are, with the whole, like, we see the women who are and aren't, but a lot of times, those with even a little smidgen of power are reluctant to even acknowledge that.
Very true. So that brings me to this concept of misogynoir, which is a term coined by queer black feminist Moya Bailey in 2010. And it is the idea of how racism and misogyny combine to oppress black women. We spoke a little bit to this. In our last conversation I had for Storied, we talked about intersectional feminism and moving from this concept of allies, which is, I'll stand by you, wish you luck, more power to you, versus co-conspirators, which is like, let's strategize, let's go out and revolt and riot, and I'm in the trenches with you, which is a very different concept. Mm-hmm. So misogynoir, this idea of feminism, what it looks like for white women or women of color, and the intersection of your identity as being a woman and a black woman. Does it resonate for you? Do you see that like come to life in your day-to-day?
No and yes. I don't have to interact with it every day, if that makes sense, because of where I work, where I hang out, where I choose to spend my time. But obviously being connected through social media, you see it all coming in, constantly connecting to the news, you see it all coming in, different aspects of it. And it is something, I think, like, to dismantle it, back to Angela's point, first you have to have acknowledgement. And a lot of our men and women are very reluctant to acknowledge it. And there's so many layers to it. And I think even now you kind of see the seams being undone because we have, I think, as a community, been very complicit in holding things together.
Yeah.
And in holding things together, you're hiding a lot of that pain, you're hiding a lot of that trauma, you're hiding a lot of the negative, because it's kind of like, don't air the dirty laundry. We don't want people to know this. It isn't as bad as you think it is, when really, oh yeah, it's
bad.
really bad.
Yeah.
When you can sit here and say that most Black girls by the age of 18, 60% have been sexually assaulted, then it's like, yeah, we need to have a conversation, because that's not, the white boogeyman doing all of this. This is like, let's self-reflect. Where are we keeping ourselves down in that aspect? And now I've gotten to the point where I kind of want a lot of our women, myself included, to kind of take a step back and figure out where have we showed up for so many people, and where have those people showed up for us, and then make a decision make a decision based on that and how we move forward.
I would say I don't really deal with misogyny. I mean, I actually see it online a lot more, and then you start to notice it, like in like movies and things like that. I mean, but when you look at the amount to which Black women are, beaten and killed by their like domestic partners, who are often, like, when you look at within Black partnerships, how frequently we are, treated with violence, at the hands of our own people. I mean, it's kind of like, it is disheartening, but it's one of those things, like you said, that you kind of have to dismantle. Like, we have to be honest about, Black men have to be honest about their not only misogynistic like beliefs as men, they have to look at racially how they oftentimes uphold those same types of like stereotypes towards Black women. I mean, you see Black men say I've definitely seen Black men on Twitter make comments about why, Black women end up alone, about, how, different things like that. So it's like, but then turn around and get upset when Black women say things, like, say men are trash, it's kind of like, well, not all men,
Right.
and
When not all men, yeah.
Yeah.
Seeing that line too.
you see the like not all men, but then you start breaking out like statistics, and it's like, oh.
And then it's like, well, where's this energy when we are being violated?
Exactly.
Like, they're quick to defend the trashiness, the trash behavior, but then when when our girls are being sexually assaulted, when they are being physically abused, when they are being murdered at the hands of their intimate partners, it's crickets on their end. So it's like, what really is important to you? Even, and I know this is so touchy, this is so sensitive, but I saw it a lot, and I don't like to bring it up, but I have to bring it up. The situation with Bill Cosby, and a lot of Black men and women were just like, well, so-and-so is still out here, and
oh my
and
goodness.
and it's like, well, what do you want? Do you want the freedom to also be able to violate the way white men do and get away with it?
They do.
Or do you really
at the end of the
do
day
you want to put the trash away? And it's like, I get the argument. I get it. But come on, like Bill Cosby, he didn't live his life. He really did. Did he really suffer? He lived his life. He got to do what he did, and it can be so frustrating, and I can hate this topic, because that's where the intersectionality between race and gender dynamics play a huge part. And it's like, even Kanye West, you see like our men acting out, and we're always giving them chance by chance by chance. I hear constantly how Rihanna ruined Chris Brown's life, but it's like,
still all these years.
what?
Right.
There are pictures of what happened, and no, we weren't there to see what happened, but girlfriend moved on, and he's still acting crazy.
Right.
But
that's the main part.
that's the main
He
part.
continued to do the
Kanye
same
West
thing.
is still. Do you know, I've been canceled Kanye West, but I have people in my face, oh, I feel bad for him. He needs to be checked in. Kim Kardashian ruined his life, and it's like, But Chrisette Michele was canceled for performing at
And she ain't
a
been
Trump.
brought back.
No, she's not.
She was canceled, like
Her and her
legitimately
Basquiat
canceled. Like hashtag cancel, get her out of here. But we are so like, and it ties into this like our obsession with our black men and our black boys. We can't hold them accountable. They suffer so much, and black women have it easier. And
We
it's
do
like
not.
No.
a conversation like.
We do not.
I want to say a conversation needs to be had, but we can talk about this until we're blue in the face. And again, it just goes back to black women take a step back. And I'll say it again, figure out where you have showed up for other people and then reflect on when those people have showed up for you and make a decision based on those findings.
Because I saw somebody say something about Kanye needs a black woman. Something about
saw
Kanye
that,
just
yeah.
needs a black woman.
Because we would save him.
To say, and they was
We don't
like,
have time
somebody
for that.
retweeted was like, nah, he left us. You stay right over there where you are.
But why is it always like black women have to be the savior?
Why do we have to clean
like,
it up?
Why is that always the case? Like
Yeah.
even people praise Beyonce for sticking with Jay-Z for cheating on her, which I think
And that's
is
ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Even her like we have the footage of her sister, beating him in the
Elevator.
she got praised for that, but still, it's like
Yeah.
okay, and now what?
I'm tired of suffering personally. So there's your memo, like I'm not cleaning anyone's spilt milk up.
No. Done.
Well,
Stop
it's no one's
that.
responsibility.
No.
Like each person, we all have brains. We all have our own minds. Like we can make our own decisions, and it's not anyone's responsibility to fix us or help us or bring us up.
Yeah.
So that argument, just in general, is stupid. To me.
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
Not just for black women, for anybody.
For
like,
anyone.
But
yeah.
they expect us to come in. It's because black women have always been painted as the savior, as the glue that, not even that, I mean, when you look at slavery, black women
Yeah,
took
that's going
care
back to
of
that.
children. They reared the children. Some of them breastfed. Even to this day, if you walk to Fifth Avenue or Flatiron, in the middle of the afternoon, you'll see nothing but black women pushing little white babies. White women look for West Indians, specifically older women, to care for their children. So we are constantly painted as the mammy, as the
Maternal
fixer,
figure.
the maternal fixer, and
It's a generational curse,
it
actually.
is. And it's like when we push back, then it's she's angry, she's got
Sassy
attitude.
black woman.
Yeah, it's
But I think
It's
too,
frustrating.
in that aspect of how we're viewed as the savior, the mommy, the therapist, all of those things, it takes away from our humanness, and it takes away from our ability to still experience life
in emotion.
as a human, which ties into our emotions. So when we do break down, when we do lose it, again, no one shows up because it's like, oh, she'll be fine. She's a strong black woman. She can handle it. And it's literally like, no, like I'm having thoughts. I'm having a moment. I need to cry. I need to be human. I also need for someone to come,
Or
be my
admonished
shoulder to
for it.
cry on.
Yeah.
But we're punished for it. We're punished for, whether it's corporate America on the tennis court, as we saw with Serena Williams, we don't get to experience that full range of the human experience, which affects us on a broader scale. It contributes, I think, as well as racism, to this concept known as weathering, where we break down in other aspects of our life, which it affects our ability to view ourselves in a positive light sometimes, which contributes to depression and anxiety. It eventually affects, if we have children, it affects our mortality rate. In addition to everything else, it affects our ability to have a healthy child. It affects our ability to be an effective mother or mother figure if we don't want children. But we're in this role, such as social work or, teaching, where we have to tap into that. It affects all of that. It's like a domino effect.
Which I think is, one of the highlights of the conversation is a focus on self-care and focusing on your own self-development also. And I think overall, just to put together some themes and some highlights, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen within our own communities also, and I think there is an opportunity for us to center our conversation within our own groups and our own people and within ourselves, and think through where there is trauma and hurt and what efforts do we need to make to be able to heal those. And beyond that, a more macro conversation, we need leadership that is also able to facilitate the healing. So voting time is just around the corner, and we should all be registered, and we should all be making plans to go out and vote. November 6th. Thank you, ladies, for the conversation. Much more to come. Thank you for joining.